everyone. My name is Kayvon Hill. I'm a part of 360 Adjuster Academy. Welcome to week 29 of the Laboratory of Redemption. Like I said, I'm a part of the 360 Adjuster Academy. I'm a part of the marketing team. I'm an adjuster. I've been an adjuster for about 2 years now. I acquired my license back in 2021. I started working my first deployment back in May of 2022, and from that point on, I stayed deployed consistently. In that year's time of me working, it was a lot of ups and downs. A lot of experiences that I gained as being an adjuster. But one thing that I can say is that I have no regrets when it comes to making this career choice and making this change. So if you're in here for a great reason. God guided you here today to get this information that we're going to give to you.
Yes, sir.
Today, on the schedule, we have our guest speaker from one of our own from 360 Adjuster Academy, Miss Kandace Johnson.
Hey,
She's in the training
Joy.
department. Yes, K Joy. And I just want to give everyone a reminder before we go ahead and transfer over to our guest speaker. If you guys can please fill out that feedback form for us. We would love to, get your information. If you guys have any questions or anything, please feel free to drop them in the chat. Also, if you guys have any questions, even after the meeting is over, please feel free to reach out to anyone on our team. If someone, Major or Sterling, if you can drop our socials in the chat for us. Also, please give us a follow, like, comment on our socials.
Yes, please.
We're a growing company, so we appreciate all support. So we'll go ahead and get started with our meeting today with our guest speaker, Miss Kandace Johnson. Just a little brief introduction for her. She has 18 years of experience in insurance. She has done claims consulting for auto and property. She's done auto and property claims. 8 years in leadership. She also is a public speaking coach. So, she does her thing when it comes to the speaking as well.
So
So,
listen closely.
yes, please listen. So, we're very proud and we appreciate her so much. So, I want to go ahead and introduce K Joy.
Let's go.
Whoop, 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 whoop.
Thank you. So sweet. I appreciate that. It's always interesting to hear yourself get introduced. So, okay. All right. And you're like, I hope I sure live up to those standards on this call today. So I hope you all are having a great Sunday. Definitely, it's a pleasure to be here and be able to speak in front of you all. Major, I should have checked with you before. Did you get that PowerPoint by chance? If not, it's okay.
You want me to pull it up for you right now?
Yeah, that'd be great. I'm gonna just share a little more on my background as he's pulling that up. But Kavion, thank you so much for that. I am a part of the 360 training team. Like you said, with my background, 18 years in insurance, auto and property. I've done it at the desk. I've done auto in the field. I haven't done property in the field, so I can't talk to you on that dream. But we've got a lot of partners on here that are doing it, killing it. 100K club people and things like that. So I'm gonna shift those things to them. I've definitely hired people for the field. We've done continued to look at estimates, quality, things like that. But that's not my forte. So we've got a lot of great people for that on here, though. So like you mentioned, I'm a public speaking coach. That is something I do on the side. I was a prior debater in high school, which is how that all came about. But I'll talk a little bit in my speech today about how I got into becoming more of like a public speaking coach and taking that from that debate history, right? Because that wasn't something that I initially kind of ran into. It was just like, I'm still in the judging pool for years. Now, what do I want to do with this? So that wasn't something initially. And then in addition to that, definitely working on becoming a life coach and a motivational speaker. So excited to talk to y'all again today about new beginnings. I will say that when Toby mentioned the other week, or when we do our prep calls and they're like, hey, Candace, you talk about new beginnings. The first thought was, oh man, I've shared a little, quite a bit of my story with the group. I don't know if I can bring a different angle. Well, let me think on that. But it's not really like, hey, no, I can't do that, right? It's like, okay, great, I'll be ready. So we'll definitely go over some things. I'm going to share more on this call, more about walking through those new beginnings. A lot of the calls that I've talked to, we've talked really high level on my background through insurance, some of the struggles that have come up through my career. But I want to talk more about how you walk through those steps of those new beginnings. And hopefully that'll help give some context and hopefully it'll speak to you all today. So Thanks, Major, for pulling this up for me. When we think about new beginnings, I found this quote that really spoke to me. I hope you guys can hear me okay. Sorry, I am on twice. If you see that, I think Coach Brock probably called me out earlier. My laptop, for some reason, when I do Zoom calls with 360, and in my 360 folks, the speaker just doesn't like to work. I don't know what it is. So I am on my phone. So let me know if y'all have any issues hearing me. But I found this quote by Oprah, and I thought it was really fitting for today because it says, "We can't become what we need to be by remaining what we are," by Oprah. And if a lot of people, I don't know her full story, but definitely, you hear about her story of making it through mainstream media and clearly where she's started, where she came from, and all the things she's done. We know that she's definitely had to walk into new beginning opportunities, definitely to get to where she is today. So just one of my things, I actually had never heard the quote before. So I was really excited when I found it. Thought it was a great picture of her as well, but that's beside the point. So, all right, Major, if you'll go ahead and go ahead and go to the next screen for me. All right, so wanted to just start off really simple, right? What does, new beginnings mean? I just simply looked this up and stole it off of, I think it was like a LinkedIn or Indeed posting on Google. So this is not my own words. I want to make sure I don't take credit for that. It just says new beginnings means that you're allowing yourself to accept changes that might bring good things to you. New beginnings means that you are capable of knowing where you lacked in the past in using those examples of failures to create a success ladder for your future self. I wish I could take credit for this. Like, I felt like it flowed so well. I was like, "Ooh, man, I like that, but I can't take credit for it." So either way, just, kind of a stable point for us to think of as you're, listening to this today, as you're thinking about your own success stories, failures, which I don't really like to say failures. I mean, you try, didn't work out, you keep trying. So, but just somewhere to reference. So when you think about new beginnings though, actually, Major, I think it's the next slide we'll have you go to. This isn't a long PowerPoint because more of it's going to be me sharing more in between, but this is really, the focus of this, right? For everyone, it's going to be very different. So when I speak today about new beginnings, I'm going to share a little bit about all of these throughout my time, through my career personally, and then different things that I've grown on my own. But I say that to say, when we talk about these things, and as we've talked through this month about new beginnings, people probably focused on different areas, right? Whether it was personal, spiritual, career focus. Normally it aligns somewhere within those, and then it'll align somewhere within that with you. Keep in mind, our own personal journeys are just that, right? So my journey may not be the same as, Coach Ryan's journey. Coach Ryan's journey isn't going to be the same as Janae's, but there are some key things that we can take away from talking about new beginnings and how we handle those things, right? And every speaker that we have on normally shares a lot about their career path. And then normally, you hear Travis talk about scars being covered up. You've heard Toby talk about, tragedy and recovering from there, going from different field, oil and gas field into adjusting. We've heard so many different transitions, right? So that come to mind when we think about new beginnings. I also think about Major, who does, way more than just adjusting, right? We were talking about that yesterday, right? And all the different things that he knows and helps everybody with. So just think about it from that standpoint. I'm going to talk a little bit about all of these as I talk through some transition points, but the main thing to know is that you're going to have new beginnings. And if you're not spiritual or religious, this isn't to offend you. We talk a lot from the company that's being built as 360 Academy. There's a spiritual piece to that, right? So for me, I'm always going to speak to that. Plus, I'm a spiritual person. But if you're not, or you're not religious, don't let that offend you. Some people, say, hey, I don't speak on it the same way you may, but I do relate to it this way. And that's all right. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, it takes us all, right? So, all right, Major, if you'll go to the next piece for me. All right. So I just really want to start, like I said, just really, really talking through some of this since we've got quite a bit of time. And the first question you really want to ask yourself is like, are you willing to take the first step, right? When there's new beginnings, whether it's Janae going from accounting into adjusting, or when Meech decided to get into the spa game, you got to stop somewhere and ask yourself, am I willing to take the first step? And that sounds really easy when you think about it. Like we have to walk, from our cars back to the door. So I'm sure people are going, oh man, the first step's really not that tough. But for a lot of people, that first step, that's golden. Like, that's not something they've ever done before. So when you think about things like changing career paths, maybe it's walking into spirituality, maybe it's changing denominations, maybe it's deciding to get coaching, maybe it's deciding to get counseling, and you've never been, or maybe you've never been a part of a family that supported that, that first step can be really big. for me, a big step for new beginnings became after my dad passed, and I went to counseling for the very first time. And one of the things that, came through that counseling session was just like, my whole idea of success changed after my dad passed. And that was really weird for me because many of y'all have probably heard parts of my story. Very corporate driven person. I really never saw myself like building a business outside of that. So for that, it was kind of like, ooh, whoa, what's going on? Like, I'm just focused on, I want to climb the ladder. I want to get as high as I can, be a great leader, these things, which you can still be a great leader. But then it changed to what can I do about sharing my voice to help other people? And that was just an odd situation. I didn't really know where to go with that, right? And then plus I was grieving, so there was multiple layers of that. So a few things that I put on here was just remember to give yourself some patience. Make sure that you remember that you're not gonna be able to turn the ship overnight. You'll hear a lot of people say that, but no matter where you're at in life and where you're stepping out to make the change to a new beginning, whatever that looks like, whether it's personally, spiritually, or career focused, you can't turn the boat in one day, right? But you got to pick one thing to start on. And I think that's the hard thing for a lot of people. And I say that because I remember when I decided the first time that I wanted to become a blogger on my own, I was very adamant that I didn't want to blog for like another company, right? I was just like, oh, I want to start my own blog site. I want to, build a logo. Don't have a clue what I want the site to look like. If any of y'all that don't know me very well, I'm not a tech person. Like that to me is like foreign language. So talking about telling someone what I'd want on a website, no idea. I just know that I want it, right? Like I want it now. I want this logo. I don't really know what I want there, and so it's just like, whew, okay. And then as I was talking to people that I would meet that were in like the speaking game and different things like that, people would say, well, if you're gonna blog, what you gonna blog about? And I was like, I just really feel passionate about sharing my voice now. Well, based on what? Like why is it such a big deal now? And I was like, I lost my dad and I just have been feeling like, something's really been pushing me. And if you're spiritual, a lot of times you feel like you're like, okay, the spirit's been pushing me to share my voice. And I've always been kind of an introvert, but an extrovert. I know that sounds weird for people, but for me to say I want to share my voice, people were just like, well, what you gonna share, Kandace? I don't know. You're pretty reserved. Right. But
Tons
that's
of
what,
experience.
but when you start telling people that, they're like, what's your niche? Like, where are you going to niche down to? Like, it's got to be specific, right? If you're going to actually do this and you're going to gain an audience. And I was strictly like, oh, I'm going to write about everything. I just knew in my heart, like, I'm writing about everything. It's a lifestyle blog. And they were like, other people I knew that were writing books and stuff. They're like, that's not going to work, Kandace. Like you got to figure out one audience. It's like, oh, this is so hard. Like I feel like this is what I'm being led to do. But I say that to say the first step was really starting to figure out like, maybe all the no, I mean, you want mentors, you want coaches, but sometimes you got to listen to just what your heart is driving you to do. And I say that to say, I stepped out and just started writing, before my site was ready. I also started working on what I thought the logo would look like. And as I connected with the one person, somebody who had been a part of my life for quite some time. So reconnected with them because they were passionate about graphic design and logos and things like that. And said, hey, I've got this idea, you know me really well. I need to really just be able to throw some ideas out there, right? And help watch you put it together. So sometimes taking that first step is it's not sometimes. I think every time I've taken the first step, and the last been a little scary sometimes to turn the corner, right? So I can remember telling friends and family like, oh, I'm starting a blog. I'm all excited. People, I mean, let me tell you, everybody, who's your audience? What are you writing about? I was like, oh, life. That's broad. You're not gonna have an audience. I had a friend that had an online radio station. He was like, I'm excited for you, K-Joy, but who are you going after? And I was like, everybody. He's like, no. No. And I was like, oh gosh, okay, maybe I'm hearing it wrong, So, but you got to pick somewhere to start, right? So I had to figure out if I'm going to share about life, like what angle of life am I sharing about? I'm a woman. I'm going to just speak truths here, right? So what's known? I'm a woman. I'm a Black woman. I was middle aged at the time, So what are things I can write about that can relate to people, but still may not fall into what everybody else is saying a blogger should be? But the first step was just deciding, okay, and see, for me, I felt like, what first step? I want to take the first step and then I want to run, right? So I don't want to have all that figured out. I just want to be able to write and share my voice. But I have to think about trying to gain followers, right? Like that's the whole point of blogging is you want to get a following. So, but the first step was really important for me because it wasn't something I'd ever done before. And it was outside of my complete personality, right? So think about it from that standpoint, and taking that first step can be really scary no matter what avenue you're in. So when I say that, I want to talk about a few things for some of y'all that are probably thinking about new beginnings. One, most of y'all are already in new beginnings because a lot of you didn't start your life off as your professional life as an adjuster, right? One new beginning already. So sometimes we also discount that first step because we just feel like it's a progression in life, right? So that first step, we don't always take time to sit back and just kind of relish for a moment, like, whew, that was kind of it's a big thing. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just gonna just put this out here. I'm guessing when Coach Ryan, when he first started his financial, coaching business, his first client was probably, it's probably a big thing, right? Like that's a big step. And I can't say, I don't know. I didn't ask him. I'm just gonna take a, take a guess. But for all of us to do those things, right? Major does investing. And for all of those things that many of you all do out there and that you've done before this life, you've taken the first step before and you've succeeded because you're still here, right? Success looks very different for so many of us, but give yourself a break for that first step and know that it's getting you started. The whole point of new beginnings is it's new to you, right? And so as you take that first step, it's like a baby step. We're all excited when we see the baby, whether it's your baby or not, or a cousin or whoever it is. It's like, oh my gosh, right? Oh my gosh, right? It's great. Celebrate that step. I can tell y'all when my logo was first done for my website, when I first started blogging, I cried like a baby, probably more than y'all need to know, but it was just like something about it spoke to me. So I knew once he finished creating and we had gone back to the drawing board and back to the drawing board, those tears came and I was like, that's it, 100%. And he's like, are you sure? Are you sure? And I was like, 100%, like these tears, I can't stop. So I say that to say, take a moment after new beginnings, take the first step, but also celebrate that first step. You'll never have that first step again, right? So, all right, we can go to the next slide, Major. So after the first step, though, comes many other steps, right? We walk before we run. And well, maybe I should say we walk before we sprint, before we run. Really, that's probably the more logical way to say it. But after you think about new beginnings and you taking that first step, at some point you start to sprint. And then you're treading water a lot of times because many of us are in unknown territory. So many times on these calls, you've heard us all say in the adjusting world, you know what? I got out there, I didn't know what to do, whether you were at the desk, whether you were in the field, whether you were assisting, whether you were, no matter what you were doing, right? Like I specifically, sorry, Dennis, I'm gonna steal something from you here. Dennis, a lot of times we're talking about training classes. Dennis is so open and honest on these calls. He's like, man, I got out there. They didn't teach, I didn't know nothing. Like I was like, and so Chinese. When you think about, yeah, well, yeah. So when we're creating trainings, Dennis was one that'll tell you, like, I'm thinking of it from the standpoint of like, I got out there and if I knew if I didn't know anything, what would I want somebody to teach me from day one, right? For some of the stuff he's working on for the field adjusting piece. And that's so true because a lot of times when we're treading water, we've got to go back to what we can relate to and what we didn't get, right? Like what would help somebody else out and what would make it better. But in the moments of treading water, I say that because some point after new beginnings, you start sprinting and then you start running, right? So at some point, my blog became saying, not mundane to me because I'd be up at 3 a.m., 4 a.m. writing, ready to post, way before time and all of those things. And as I expanded where I was posting, as I was guest starring on online radio shows and things like that, it just became a part of my life, right? So I started treading water, but through the tread, I was still working a full-time job. I didn't have a bunch of funding, you know what I mean, to start putting into sponsorships and different things like that. And there are days that are hard, right? The days that I didn't get up and write at 2 and 3 a.m., the days that words didn't come easy. So one thing about being a writer or a speaker, people always feel like, oh man, that comes so easy for them. It's probably nothing. But a lot of people will tell you when you get into the thing that you're most passionate about and you feel like you're here for, like outside of maybe what your full-time job is, or maybe that is the thing, because sometimes people mistake that too and they think, whatever their passion is doesn't relate to what they do every day. But sometimes that is what it is for people. It's tough in those moments where you're like, man, the words ain't coming. but I'm a
Yeah.
speaker, I'm a writer. What do you mean? You know what I mean? I had days like that. I was like, okay, I've got a blog to have ready, and I like to be ahead of things. So for me, if I was posting on Tuesday morning, that blog was ready 2 weeks before, typically, because I want to read it, which, ooh, Lord knows, I go back and read now, and I'm like, what was I thinking? I needed an editor. I wanted to do this on my own. But when I say tread water, I mean, I'd be up excited watching Law and Order SVU 2, 3 in the morning, working on 3 weeks out, thinking about what I could drop to post, little hints and things, and trying to think of different things to, create and craft. But there are times where the words, you just feel like they don't come in that craft that you have, or that even though you're excited, things slow down or it's not moving the way you want, right? There'd be weeks where I'd post, and as I'd look at my Google Analytics, it's like, man, that didn't really reach anybody. Maybe my words aren't connecting, and so there's going to be hard days. And when I saw this picture of the water going over, over the edge, I thought, that's exactly at some point in new beginnings, you definitely feel like the days are harder and longer because of what you're trying to accomplish, whatever that is. And with that, for most of us, is going to come some emotional work, right? There's going to be times where you're saying, especially if you're working on something outside of what you do every day, for what you do to provide for your family financially, you got to balance time, work, family, everything else. And outside of that, just life. I mean, I don't know about y'all, like new beginnings, life, family, everything else going, emotions come with that. I don't care who you are. I'm not
New
a big
challenges
component.
as well.
Yeah, new challenges. And so that comes for anybody, men and women. I know a lot of people like to believe, oh, well, men don't feel the same way. Hey, I'm not gonna speak for a man. I've never been a man. I'm not trying to be one. What I'm saying though is that there's still emotional things that change even for men through these, different steps as it does for women. So although those may be different, there's still things that have to be worked through, and that takes time. And it's not always the easiest thing to do. And a lot of times we don't even know how to get through it, right? So that's where you want to think about, who your circle is through those times. We talk a lot about community support. Of course, 360, this community is really big on focusing on people being holistic and really well. But when I think about my journey as I was going through becoming a blogger, at times when I decided to talk about getting into a motivational speaking cohort, a lot of those things, some of the things I didn't even share with people because I was just like, I don't really want to hear the outside noise. Like, let me get in it and get going. And I don't want 50 million questions. You know what I mean? I want to keep my momentum up. I want to keep my excitement up. But even in that, it gets hard. And that's where that support, if it's one or two people, is so helpful, because when you start to doubt yourself, it's those people typically that'll help carry you through in those moments, right? When you're ready, hopefully not to literally go over a cliff, y'all. Look, I mean, anybody gets to that point, please call one of us. Like, we don't want to, see you at that point. But things get hard, things get rough. Maybe it's something you've invested in, a lot of time, a lot of money in, and it didn't work out, or you're not sure any further. So for me, I think about it like treading water. I think about it also when I think about new beginnings. I think about, as families grow, right? I can remember when I first got the first call that I was going to become an aunt for my first nephew. I can still remember where I was. I remember what I was doing. I don't know if y'all remember the day in Dallas, hanging out at Papados on a Friday night used to be the thing. Like, it was it when I was like after college age, probably. And so I can remember coming out of a Papados one night. My brother and sister-in-law called. They were like out somewhere traveling, and we're like, we just found out we're pregnant, And so when I think about new beginnings of becoming an aunt, a lot of things went through my head of the type of aunt I wanted to be. And as my nephews got old enough to drive, it was right in the point of a lot of social injustices. And I'm sure a lot of y'all will say, well, that's been going on. But a lot of things were happening where, people were being hurt, and then where people weren't being held accountable, right? And my nephews, they're biracial. They were, turning 16. And a lot of people will say, oh, well, I still slept okay at night. As an aunt, I didn't sleep okay at night. I'd be up crying, praying in the middle of the night, Lord, please don't let my nephews get stopped, like just all these things you think about, right? And so that's still things when you think about new beginnings. It's not always tied to, when I say personal, it may not be just your kids. It may not just be, what works for me personally, or what I'm thinking about may not be the same thing that Michi would be, right? And that's okay too, but we want to find ways to work through that, right? And so when I say tread in water, through a lot of those things that were hard and tough, and a lot of that hasn't let up, you still have to find a way to go on and work through those other new beginnings in your life that you're trying to get through by not be overly held to the fear, right? So
Right.
when we talk about who your circle is, that may be family, it may be this community. Well, one, I'm just gonna claim that for y'all, right? But it's this community too. But people will hear me reference my 360 family community. So it's not always easy though, because everybody we want to support us is not always our hugest cheerleader, and that can be hurtful, right? You got best
Very.
friends, you got family, and sometimes, I can remember when I first started blogging, I'd ask my mom, like, have you read it at all? You know what I'm saying? And she's like, no. And I can remember for a long time, she was like, no, never read it. But she wasn't a big tech person. So trying to read something on a phone, she definitely didn't have a laptop. So I remember when I first showed her, like, the first time on her phone where she could find it and read it, she read a few things. I was like, oh no, I'm really proud. And I'm like, oh my God, like that just meant so much. And not really because I 100% needed her acceptance. It was just nice to know her support was there, right? Because as I
Right.
was treading water, working a full-time job, and going through some other things in life, it's just like, it's nice to have that support there, because when we talk about treading water, it looks so different for everybody. A lot of people, when you respond to stress, when you respond to balance, how I do that isn't going to be the same way Janae does it. And the way Janae does it is going to be the same way that, Travis does it. I'll say T Brock, sorry, Travis. So, and that's okay. It just is all very different. And so you got to think about yourself. So there's a piece of self-awareness that comes in this as well when you think about new beginnings. But when I also think about that, I want to share, when I got into leadership, I was thinking about this story as I was thinking about this topic. I was with the company that I got into leadership with for 11 months. I was here in Dallas. They wanted me to go to South Carolina to start a brand new team. I'm going to say a baby team for those of y'all that, hopefully that's not offensive, but it's a baby team because what they wanted to do was take a first notice of loss team. So when you first call in a claim and report a claim, they wanted to take some people from there and promote them up, which I'm great with. Hey, that's a great opportunity. Love that. But it's a different type of challenge and training that comes with that. So when we went through the process and the offers came, they were looking at moving somebody else from Florida to Texas to take my team. And I was like, well, I need to leave Texas. You know what I'm saying? This is home for me. My home base is here. So why do I want to go to South Carolina to build a brand new team when I could be in my comfort zone? Why do I want to tread water, right? Why do I need to do that? I have a team here. I can build this team out. But, my boss has said, hey, we got to get opportunities for you in South Carolina. It's like, well, what do I do, right? New beginnings, whole new team, new opportunity to build a team that had never had property experience up to being to a point where they were championing different things and we were winning things on board. So sometimes it doesn't look like what we want it to look like. And I got to tell you, I was in a battle when that offer came because I helped interview the guy that came and took over my team, So it was like, am I happy for him? Is he cool? I don't know. I'm just being honest with y'all. You know what I mean? I didn't have any problems with him personally, but when he got here and they're like, yeah, you need to help train him up. And I'm like, I could have been perfect here. He could have been in South Carolina. Florida, South Carolina is a cheaper move on a company than Florida to Texas. And then you're moving me from Texas to South Carolina. Y'all see what I'm saying? Y'all see the angles there? It's a lot of money.
New beginnings, though. New
That's
beginnings.
the new beginnings, right? And I will say that for me, at first, I wasn't overly excited about it. But I got there and I got settled. And sometimes with new beginnings, although it's scary, you will find yourself in the right place. I got there, every other leader there, yes, was a transplant from somewhere. Nobody was from South Carolina. So they all knew what I was going through. And there was amazing support teams met there as far as other leadership. The team that I got to interview and help build, I created something new within the company. We were the third property team ever for that company. So not only then, I was able to leave a mark in a different way, if that makes sense. But I wasn't thinking about that then, right? Because I was treading water. I'm helping with a team that has its own problems. I'm trying to continue my blog, all these other things I've got going. And I'm not thinking about how this new beginning is a new blessing for me to have an opportunity to build other people up build new
Had to
leaders and
shift
all
your
these other
perspective.
things.
To
For
grow.
sure. For sure. And my boss definitely at one point was like, because I definitely at one point said something, because he said something to me about the guy coming and how I was feeling. I was like, well, I kind of think you could have just sent him to South Carolina, you know, and he was like, did you really think about this before you answered? And I was like, not at all, not at all. Because I was like, you know, my brother's here, my nephews are here, like, no, my cousin. And he was like, well, how could we send him to Florida and we don't have a property team? I mean, to South Carolina from Florida, we don't have a property team there yet. There's no presence, there's no trainer. How do we send somebody who doesn't even know the company, doesn't know the policy? Who's going to get all that going? Why would it? So we got to bring him here. We don't have a choice. And you know, I didn't stop to think about that, because sometimes when you're treading water, you don't think so clearly. You're just trying to get through it, right?
Muddy water.
So yeah, muddy waters, right? About to head over that cliff, about to head over the cliff, right? Because I was definitely like, you know what? I'm not, I don't know about this. But I can tell you, South Carolina ended up being a great move for me. So met some great friends, people that'll be friends, you know, the rest of my life. I built teams that even since I've been gone, like they still keep in touch and ask, you know, talk back and forth. And that's not necessarily the premise of the story. The premise is more of, a lot of times in the new beginning, we don't always see the blessing, or like, I think it was Janae that, you know, said, hey, that there's perspective, you know what I mean, that you've got to put on that. You've got to be self-aware enough to know that most new beginnings aren't going to be easy to walk into. It just isn't. I hate to say it. I mean, there's a lot of them that'll be amazing and simple. Sorry, Kavion, what were you saying?
I was saying they won't. They'll be
Mm.
challenging, you know, sometimes
Yeah,
in the
for sure.
beginning. Yeah.
They will. They will indeed. So when I think about that for myself, and when I was, you know, the other part of that was like, okay, well, I've been a leader with your company, but not that long, but you're willing to send me. But it also said something else about what they saw in me, right? But I wasn't seeing it from that angle at first. All I was focused on was like, oh man, I got to pick up and leave. You know, I was kind of excited, but then I was kind of like, you know, it'd be nice to stay here with family and friends and in my comfort zone, because that's where we like to stay, right? Where we're most comfortable. So I say that to
That
say
part, the comfort
that
zone is
part,
a
the
killer.
comfort
Yeah.
zone.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's tough, right? And
Comfort is
so
killer.
it is. It is. But we don't always see it like that when we're in it. But I can be thankful for those things after going through it, and seeing the things that I was able to do and leave as a, you know, really valuable situation before I left South Carolina a few years later to come back. So, but I couldn't have done that either. Like the circle of people that I met in South Carolina for support, because like I said, we were all the leaders there were transplants. None of them were from South Carolina. Now a lot of the adjusters and things like that were, but because all the leaders had moved from all over the world, when I got there, it was like, hey, we've got a new leader in the house. You know, like we need to make sure she knows where this is, and you know where to go and where to get this and what's going on these, you know. And so it was really a little overwhelming, but so much Southern hospitality. And so I wasn't there like, oh my God, I don't know anybody. Because shortly after I got there, like my oldest nephew got baptized by my brother. I must have cried the whole time. And they were videoing, I was on video with him, but I still was just like, I've never missed an event, you know, like tread water, right? Tread
Right.
water. So you've got to take those things with a grain of salt and recognize that a lot of times there's things in it that you don't see or that you don't already know are coming. Because it was definitely a blessing to be there. I met some people, amazing people. I grew a team, like I said, from a baby team to a tenured team. Many of them went on to be, for some of y'all that have never worked at us, you know, quality champions, customer service champions, all of these things, great bonuses, you know, that I got to deliver with performance and top performers within our entire property team. And that's not always easy to do, you know. And so, and that's really not a testament to me. I tested it to my team because they were hard workers. They were willing to learn and put in the work and grind with me. Because I'm really big on, you know, I think I've talked about that before, like, if they're in the you know, if we're in the trenches, we're gonna be in there together. You know what I mean? Things get tough.
Right.
I'm get on the phone with y'all, right? I'm get on the
Yeah.
floor with y'all. I'm get on the phone. But when we celebrate, we're gonna celebrate good, right? So we'll talk a little more about that a little further into. Major, will you change to the next slide for me? So the other part of it is topping the hill. I talked a little bit about this, but when I say celebrate the small victories, I probably should have read this again before I sent this to Major. Sorry. What this should really say is think about, I'll just say it like this, think about celebrating the small victories until you get to the large ones. So, you know, if any of you guys, I call it topping the hill, right? Like you get to a certain point of that new beginning where you're starting to get to that hill, like you're no longer just treading water, you're like up here on the hill, right? So as my blog got going and it was steady, I was putting it out every Tuesday morning on time. I'd expanded to, you know, putting a commercial on an online radio station. I had 2 commercials running on there. I was steadily, you know, coming in as a guest speaker on that radio station and different shows on different topics. And then I'd also, you know, started sharing it on another website. That for me was topping the hill. I wasn't quite, you know, where I wanted to be with it, but I had to stop for a minute and be like, you know what? Okay, we're making some good, you know, some good traction here. So I'm gonna have to celebrate that.
Right.
You know, then also just starting to invest in myself. A lot of times we don't take time to just be grateful for the things we've started to do that we weren't always doing. For me, it was
Right.
never about me. Like my whole life, I've always focused on other people. So when I started putting time into myself and things and visions that I had in dreams, the motivational speaking cohort, I can remember a few friends and family saying like, wow, that's not really something, you know, you really haven't heard you do much of, you know, like investing in yourself, which is sad to say, but it's so true, you know? And so that's not necessarily, when I say top in the hill, it's not the completion of it though, right? The top in the hill is getting to a point where things have plateaued out and you can start to kind of breathe a little bit and you're like, okay, I'm not where I want to be, but I've definitely seen the progress, right? So whether that's in your career at work, whether it's personally, maybe it's a weight loss journey, maybe it's changing your attitude, you know what I mean? Because that takes some steps. Maybe it's
Definitely.
changing, yeah, maybe it's changing how you respond to things. Maybe it's starting to plan things and you've never been a planner, right? To start putting goals down and actually achieving those. So we have to take time though in those new beginnings to actually say, okay, I've made it to a stable point. I can at least celebrate that. And I know some people will say, celebrate, man, I can't be celebrate everything. I'll be broke. That looks different for everybody. You know what I mean? So maybe that celebration is your own little, you know, Travis likes to do a body roll. Maybe for somebody it's dancing in front of I don't know what it is. So, and I don't know that Travis likes to do a body roll. Y'all just see him dance all the time on camera. So to me, that means it makes him happy. So when I talk about small victories leading to large ones, it doesn't have to be something. My small victory doesn't have to look like Toby's, right? And my large
Right.
victory doesn't have to be the same as Sophia's. But as long as it's something we can relate to, that's really all that matters. And I can guarantee you that the circle that is with you as you're going up that mountain, treading water, topping the hill, they will be open to celebrate those things with you, whatever that looks like, you know, whether it's finishing the vision board or not finishing the vision board, as Meech talked about earlier. But I think, you know, the biggest thing is a lot of times when we're in new beginnings, we don't always stop to make time to recognize the steps we've taken along that, right, to inch and get
Right.
there. And so I really just want to encourage you all to do that no matter what avenue of life it's in. I can tell you guys that new beginnings for me, you know, when my dad passed and I moved from Florida back to Texas, for me, Texas will never be the same. I came back to Texas, I wrote about it, and people didn't believe me. I mean, well, some of my friends did because I had a really rough grieving process, which I've talked about on some of the calls. But Texas, it never will be. It didn't feel like home. It felt like home, but not fully home. It's hard to describe. So
Yeah.
there's so many different things when we talk about new beginnings. I had to figure out what life looked like without my dad, and I was pretty close to my dad. So for many of y'all, when you lose somebody special to you and you don't really know what life looks like, Pat, and I shouldn't say what life looked like. I wasn't a weird connection with my dad, right? But it's just some things that, you know, come to mind that's like, whew, man, you know, and it could be, you know, moving away and traveling for the first time and you don't know how that works with your home life, right? When you get back home, how does that fit in? It could be that you don't have people supporting you while you're doing that. It could be whatever avenue, because so many of y'all that are in this independent adjusting world, there's so many other visions you have, right? I can think of just a 360 leadership team, and some of us are focused on foster care. Some of us are focused on speaking in the community, recidivism. Like there's so many avenues of things we want to touch and build in other businesses. And so the new beginning piece is just step one. It's just the start of 5 million other things, in my opinion, for most people. And so for myself, those new beginnings of like so many things, starting that motivational speaking cohort, starting the life coach, actually starting to coach for public speaking versus saying, I'm going to do it. Right. I think back to my first YouTube video I ever did announcing the blog and public speaking. Oh man, I go back and watch that now and I'm like, man, there was all kind of noise in the background. It makes me think of when I hear Travis say, it may be trash. It's like, yep, it was trash. And he wasn't saying that to me to be mean. We were just talking about something else. I think talking about beginner stuff. But I just say that to say, y'all, you know, I think all of us have probably had some new beginnings. If you've had a new beginning, can I get y'all to drop a 1 in the chat for me? And for all of you guys that are still experiencing new beginnings, which I hope this is many of you, because not only have you stepped out to join, you know, a lot of y'all are consistently on this call with us every week. So to me, that says I'm also up for another new beginning, right? Which is building and being a part of a community that supports me and will actually walk with me, you know, as I'm experiencing the new beginning, as I'm treading the water, and as I'm topping the hill. So for those of y'all that believe that walking through that new beginning, treading the water and topping the hill is going to get you to somewhere completely different at some point, can I get 100 dropped in the chat?
Indeed.
So I want to just share 1 or 2 other things with you guys really quick, and this is going to finish this out definitely. There's a few things I always try to think about, you know, when I go back and watch our 360 videos from time to time, because I just like to see what's been talked about. You know, we've talked a lot about different things, right? We've so many different topics over the weeks between integrity, faith, faith probably wasn't a topic we talked about. It's one of the pillars we stand on, but faith, resilience, you know, multiple things like that, grit, all of these things that we talk about that really, when you think about new beginnings, every one of those words aligns with you being able to make it from a new beginning to the completion of whatever that new step is. But in one of the books that I like to read, it's a life coaching book for successful women, right? One of the chapters was called, Will You Give Yourself Permission to Change? A lot of times walking into new beginnings, the answer to that has to be yes, right? Because we're not always comfortable, like we said. But one of the quotes that was said in that was, nobody can go back and start a new beginning, but anyone can start today and make a new ending. So this sounds kind of weird because it's saying, oh, nobody can go back and start a new beginning. But what she's talking about there is you can't change everything from your past, right? So one of the things I blogged about that was big for me was having, it was called My Past Shook Hands with My Future, right? But it was really about me forgiving myself for the past mistakes that I've made in life, or the past things that I've allowed to be my barrier that I had to get through in order for my future to shine through, right? So I want you guys to keep that in mind. I don't necessarily care who you were 5 years ago, neither does most of the team. The licensing people may care, right? What you did 5 years ago, but we can find ways to walk around that. So give yourself permission to forgive yourself for the things you may not have done the way you would have done them now. That's going to be a huge part of topping the hill as you start new beginnings. One other thing I'll leave you with, it was something that I put on a shirt years ago. And
say that one more time. That was too good. One more time.
Yeah,
back
that was deep.
I can't. I'm sorry.
That was too good.
Actually, you know what? I'm
Hold
sorry.
on
That was off the cuff, so we're gonna have to run the replay. I'm sorry. It was off the cuff, so I can't repeat it. I'm sorry.
Oh,
I actually
man,
I didn't have that
fire.
one in my notes. I'm
Give
sorry.
yourself
I love
permission.
it. She was so in the moment.
Sorry. But one other thing I'll drop before the last quote was just something I put on shirts years ago. And I plan to redo this again when my blog site gets back up and running. I'm having it revamped. But it says, my success is not defined by one's acceptance. And I just want you guys to hear that and hear it 100%. Whatever that looks like for you, right? I don't have to have, although I feel like I would have Kavion support, he doesn't have to come and say, K-Joy, I support you, right? Same thing with Travis. But we know in this community, if you're doing things, I mean, you know, we're never going to support somebody wanting to go on drugs or become an alcoholic, we want to help you find support. But if you're trying to do something positive, we want to be here to help support that. That's why this community is so much bigger than just adjusting. We know everybody has a vision outside of the one vision, right? Which is clearly what you've heard so many times that Janae, I just hear Janae's voice automatically go off on that, right? Like,
the vision within the vision.
Yes, there we go. So Major, if you'll take us to that last slide, I'm gonna leave y'all with this last quote and then pass this back over. So this quote spoke to me when I was looking at something to end it with. It says, change is hard at first, messy in the middle, and gorgeous at the end. And no matter what journey you're on, oh, sorry, what'd you say, Kevin?
I was saying there's bars right there.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Bars.
So, bars, gotcha. So, when you think about anything you've ever done in life, this is spoken to me. This is so true. And a lot of times, the thing is, later you think about the transformation. It made me think about people I see with like butterfly tattoos and stuff. And a lot of times you'll talk to them, or even if you don't, in my head, I think all the time it is probably because it's just like this. You think about where a butterfly starts, right? And the transition that it goes through to become a butterfly doesn't look anything like it did in the beginning, just like when you think about diamonds under pressure, right? So in the midst of it, we're going to be treading water, right? We tread water a little bit. There's going to be some tears, maybe some laugh, maybe some joy. But once we get through that, it's really going to be a whole different thing. So I just highly want to encourage you to take those steps in those new beginnings, whether it's stepping into the independent adjusting world, property or auto. I'm not indifferent, but outside of that, life is definitely going to throw you some other things, that's going to force you into some new beginnings one way or the other. Just want you to know you've got the support here on this team. I'm definitely available. I know we've got a lot of different coaches in different avenues. And even if it's just adjusting. So I say that to say, I know a lot of times we get on here, we're talking about all these different avenues, even if it's adjusting. And I don't say just adjusting lightly. The job is not easy, right? Whether in the field or at the desk. We've got that support for you. We want to be here. That's why we talk about these kind of topics, right? And I didn't want to tie it 100% to my insurance background, because this community is about more than just the adjusting background. That's why it's called 360.
Right.
So I want to hope, and I'm going to say pray, but I really hope that you all know, y'all got our support as a team. I'm here. If you ever need me, feel free to reach out to me. Hopefully, I look forward to sharing and seeing y'all's journeys as y'all turn caterpillars to butterflies and so many different things, the diamonds under pressure, and so if you ever need anything, I'm always here. Feel free to reach out to me. Thank you so much for letting me talk tonight, team. If you need anything, reach out. And we appreciate it. Turning it back over.
Yes.
I
feel like I love that analogy that you use, just like walking and then sprinting and then treading, because that's really how like the first 3-4 weeks are. You first start out, you're literally just walking, is baby steps. Then you try to turn it up a notch. Right. You try to turn it up a notch, and then you're like, hold on, let me just get this work done that's already due, So it just reminded me of like my first start very much. So thank you for that.
Same here. And I was going to touch on that quote. Like it says, change is hard at the beginning. When I started off as an adjuster, like Dennis mentioned, it's like when you first get out there, you're not going to know what you're doing at all. It's a lot being thrown at you at once. So, and that's a new beginning in itself. Just taking a career change, taking that leap of faith. Me personally, I was working at Enterprise Rent-A-Car before I became an adjuster. And for the longest time, I was, dwelling on if I wanted to transfer over to be an adjuster, because Major had told me about it years prior. So, me taking that leap of faith and just jumping off the cliff and just, like we said, it's hard at first, and it gets messy in the middle, definitely, because, once you get past that, it's very gorgeous. My first couple of deployments, I was there 3 weeks, so 3 to 4 weeks, and then my last deployment I was there for 7 months, so that was beautiful. That was gorgeous at the end. So thank you so much, Coach K Joy, for sharing that information with us. It's perfect timing for us to speak about new beginnings right now in the first month of the year, because it's a new year. So at the beginning of the year, everyone is focusing on those new goals and new things that they want to accomplish in the year. So, and just to also discuss what she mentioned about being comfortable. Comfort. If you're comfortable, that means you're not growing. So, and with a new beginning, you have to have a new mindset and a new way of thinking and observing things, and, perspective. So we appreciate that so much, Coach K Joy. That was awesome information. I hope that everyone in here, received it and you can implement it to your life in some type of way. But I just want to give another reminder to everyone in here. If you can please fill out our feedback form.
Yes,
And also, if you guys have any questions that you need answered from Coach K Joy or from anyone in here, please feel free to drop the questions in the chat. But that was, our guest speaker for this week, Coach K Joy, week 29 of the Laboratory of Redemption. I also want to mention to everyone again, we are challenging for our existing and even our new adjusters if you get into the industry. We're challenging to get into the 100K club. And we mentioned it last week. If you're, in the meeting for the first time, we have started something called the 100K club, where we're challenging ourselves and everyone that's connected to us to make that $100,000 mark in 1 month. It's attainable, it's doable, and we started this club to celebrate reaching that goal. So I also want to remind everyone in here, as the deployments pick back up, challenge you to push yourself to get that 100K. Stay focused. It's possible. Travis has done it. He's motivated us to do it. He came up with the formula. So if you want to figure it out, like I said, feel free to reach out to us, even if it's after the meeting. Well, if you can drop our socials one more time for us. But next week, we do have another week of Laboratory of Redemption. We will have our guest speaker, our COO, Ms. Toby Rowe. She will be speaking next week, and we're very excited about that. Toby's going to give us some great information next week. And also for this current meeting, we will have a financial tip from Coach Ryan. So is Coach Ryan in here right now?
No, I think it's next week. I'm sorry.
It's next week?
It's next week, yeah.
Okay, excuse me, everyone. So next week we will have that financial tip from Coach Ryan. Oh yeah, he's going to drop the gems for us. And that's that's the important thing about 360 Adjuster Academy, is that we train and develop new and existing insurance adjusters, but we also focus on the human aspect, the human side of it. So that's why when you come in here, we are adjusters, and that is our primary focus, but we also give tips and information about life as well. So we appreciate everyone for joining the meeting this week. Again, I want to thank
you for your time.
Yes, thank you, Coach K Joy, again. And if you guys have any questions, please feel free to drop anything before we get out of here. All right.
Sir. Happy Sunday, guys. Thank you guys
Happy
for joining
Sunday.
us.
Happy Sunday. Thank you, everyone.
Happy Sunday. Hey.
Great job, guys.
All right. That was very good to everyone.
Candace, that was fire. You did amazing.
Yes, thank you, K Joy. That was great.
Yeah. Good work, everybody. Good work, everyone.
Thanks.
Have a good rest of the weekend.